Have you ever witnessed a scene where someone, full of power and money, believes they can trample on anyone, simply because they consider themselves superior to everyone else? Perhaps you yourself have experienced this. That feeling of being invisible, of being treated as if you have no value. Well, what you are about to discover may surprise you greatly. Imagine a luxurious law office, one of those where everything shines, gleaming marble, imposing furniture, walls that seem to carry stories of victories. It is in this setting that an arrogant billionaire enters, with firm steps and a look that immediately betrays his certainty of superiority. He didn't come to ask for help. He came to demand attention, to demand priority, to demand that everyone there bow before his name and his wealth. But stay with me until the end, because this story begins exactly where many believe it ends, at the moment of silent humiliation. As soon as he crosses the threshold, the billionaire looks around as if analyzing an environment he considers inferior to himself. Then his eyes fall on a black woman, seated at a side table, calmly and precisely organizing documents. She works silently, focused, oblivious to what is about to happen. He, on the other hand, sees only what he wants to see, someone who, according to his distorted vision, has no importance in that space. He frowns, takes a deep breath as if already irritated, and approaches without even asking who she is. And that's when his first words cut through the air like blades, dry, harsh, laden with disrespect. "Hey, you! Call someone competent to assist me. I don't have time to waste." The phrase echoes through the office. Some employees quickly raise their eyes, uncomfortable, but no one dares to intervene. The woman, however, remains firm. She breathes slowly, raises her gaze with dignity, and tries to respond politely, but the billionaire doesn't allow it. He interrupts her, speaks over her, gestures as if he were dealing with someone beneath any consideration. Have you ever experienced something like this? That kind of humiliation that doesn't shout but hurts. This is silent humiliation, the kind that hurts the most because it tries to diminish the person without raising its voice. Meanwhile, the viewer of this story begins to notice something the billionaire doesn't. There's something different about that woman's demeanor. Her gaze isn't one of submission. It carries a contained strength, a firmness that almost begs to be noticed. But he's blinded by his own arrogance, blind to the point of completely ignoring small details around him. The respect shown by his employees when she passes by, the photos on the wall that casually depict important office events, awards, recognitions, some even bearing her name. But he doesn't see, or rather he doesn't want to see. And that's precisely where the danger of underestimating someone lies. The billionaire continues speaking loudly, ordering people around, demanding service befitting his position, as he likes to repeat. The woman listens with almost divine patience, without returning the same tone, without allowing his lack of control to dictate her behavior. She knows this type of person well, and perhaps you do too. People who confuse wealth with character and status with the right to humiliate. The atmosphere in the office is changing. The silence between one person's speech grows heavier, as if everyone senses that something momentous is about to happen. Some employees timidly try to warn the billionaire that he's making a huge mistake, but he cuts them all off. He believes he's in control. He believes he's talking to someone unimportant. He has no idea who is really in front of him, and it is precisely at this point that our story begins to reveal its true strength. But I'll continue telling you about that in the next part. Stay with me. Something much bigger is about to happen. And while the billionaire continues to spread his arrogance throughout the room, something almost symbolic is happening. The woman remains calm, unwavering, as if each offensive word were just further proof that certain people still haven't learned the value of respect. Perhaps that's why so many people identify with stories like this, because deep down, everyone has experienced some kind of situation where they were underestimated, ignored, or treated as if they occupied a lesser place in the world. And if this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far, because your experiences and feelings help transform this narrative into something alive, real, built together with the viewer. As the scene unfolds, you notice how the atmosphere in the office becomes increasingly tense. His tone gradually rises, his impatience grows, and the way he looks at her reveals an absolute certainty that he's dealing with someone unimportant. But what he doesn't realize is that each of his words is only preparing the ground for the biggest turning point in his life. And this is where your participation also makes a difference. When you like this video, when you share it, when you subscribe to the channel, you help this message reach more people who need to hear stories like this. Stories that remind us that respect is the foundation of any human interaction. Your presence here isn't just a number. It's part of this movement to bring to light narratives that move, inspire, and make. Many people finally feel seen, and I say this sincerely because what we are building together is not just entertainment. It's a community that recognizes injustices, resonates with poetic justice, and relies on stories that bring strength, reflection, and even a certain relief to those who have gone through similar experiences. So, if this story is captivating you, leave your comment. Tell us what you've experienced, what you felt, or even what you hope to see happen. Your voice matters here. And if you're not yet subscribed, take the opportunity to join our journey. The more people walking together, the further these stories reach. And while you leave your like and strengthen this chain, the tension inside the office continues to rise, almost as if the universe were waiting for the exact moment to turn the tables. Because the billionaire is unaware that each gesture of contempt is building, piece by piece, his own downfall. And it is precisely there, in that moment, charged with silence and expectation, that the story begins to reveal that nothing there is what it seems, and that the truth, very soon, will explode right in front of him. The truth is, while he poured arrogance into every word, her posture became even more evident. There was no trace of submission on the woman's face, only a serenity that seemed to ignite an even stronger contrast between the two. She breathed slowly, as if controlling her own breathing to prevent emotion from destroying her dignity. Every gesture of hers, the gentle touch on the papers, the delicate adjustment of her pen, the raising of her eyes at the exact moment, revealed an elegance that didn't need to be announced. It was an elegance perceived in silence, a presence that didn't compete for attention, but which paradoxically made it impossible to ignore. And perhaps that's precisely what bothered that billionaire so much, the feeling that, despite his attitude, she remained untouched. He continued, insisting that she shouldn't interfere with the work of the real lawyers, as if she were doing the world a favor by making it clear who, in his view, had value there. With each sentence, the tension built in the room, and the silent indignation of those watching began to create an almost palpable atmosphere. It was as if everyone expected her to retaliate, but she didn't. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew that a hasty reaction would only fuel his narrative, and she preferred to maintain the self-control that so many people dream of having when they are treated with disrespect. This calmness, however, was not a sign of weakness. It was strength. It was mindset. It was a hidden truth that the billionaire would be unable to see at that moment. What was most interesting was that, as he spoke, subtle details began to emerge, like small signs hidden behind the scenes of the situation. When she touched the documents, it was evident that she knew every process, every client, every important decision circulating in that office. When someone called her name from the back, the tone wasn't informal, but respectful. And then there was the look in the employee's eyes, a mixture of admiration and nervousness, as if they were watching a spectacle they knew exactly how it would end, but couldn't interrupt. This contrast transformed the scene into something bigger than a simple discussion. It was a silent journey of true power against empty arrogance. The woman continued, trying to help, maintaining her composure despite constant interruptions. She calmly explained that she could refer the billionaire to someone, but he cut her off before she could finish speaking. It was at that moment that something even stronger began to reveal itself, her ability to not let his behavior define her response. Many people, faced with that kind of treatment, would lose control, raise their voices, and respond in kind. But she knew that dignity is a decision, a choice that is renewed with every gesture, every phrase, every instant. And that choice there had an impact that no one in the office would dare underestimate. At the same time, there was a deep emotional layer to the way she stood firm. Her restrained breathing betrayed that it wasn't easy. Nothing in that situation was simple. To be humiliated by someone who assumes who you are without knowing you, without asking, without looking closely, is a pain that transcends the moment. It's a wound that touches the soul. And yet she remained standing. It wasn't about proving anything to him. It was about not losing herself in the process. The audience feels this. You feel the growing indignation. You feel empathy for her. You feel the desire to see justice done. Not aggressive justice, but the kind that arises naturally when the hidden truth finally comes to light. While the billionaire fidgeted, making abrupt hand movements, complaining about the supposed delay, she simply observed. And in her gaze, there was something he didn't notice, self-awareness. She knew her own worth, knew her place, knew the authority she carried. This kind of inner knowledge changes everything. It's what separates those who react impulsively from those who master their own story. And perhaps that's why, even being treated as someone lesser, she radiated a strength that no one there could extinguish. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there is something transformative in the way some people deal with humiliation. Some break down, some remain silent, some retaliate, but there are also those who transform pain into presence, offense into clarity, injustice into fuel to move forward. This woman seemed to belong to this third group. When she looked at the billionaire, she didn't just see an arrogant man, she saw someone lost in his own insecurity masked as power, and this silent understanding was what built, stone by stone, the beginning of the invisible turnaround. The situation continued to unfold, and each detail became more evident. The employees tried to approach discreetly, as if wishing to protect someone they deeply respected. The billionaire, however, remained blind to his own narrative, believing he was dealing with an unimportant employee. He didn't perceive the signs, he didn't read the atmosphere, he didn't see the truth that was right before his eyes. He couldn't imagine the impact of that moment, nor the magnitude of the revelation that was about to happen. And that made the whole scene even more intense. Her posture was, at the same time, a response and a promise. A promise that the truth would come to light when the time was right, that it wasn't necessary to shout to be heard, that real power isn't displayed, it's perceived. And while this silent energy filled the office, something inside the billionaire began to stir, even if he wasn't yet aware of it. A slight hesitation, a quick change in tone of voice, an uncomfortable glance to the side, almost imperceptible signs that deep down part of him was beginning to feel that perhaps he had gone too far. And this feeling, still embryonic, would be the starting point for everything that would come after. But that continues in the next section, because there is much more to be revealed on this journey. Comment below. This makes sense to me. The atmosphere inside the office was beginning to shift almost invisibly, like when a door slowly closes and the air seems to become trapped in the room. While the billionaire continued his arrogant speech, believing he was in complete control of the situation, the employees around him exchanged glances that spoke volumes. It was the kind of silent exchange that only happens when everyone knows a hidden truth about to explode in the center of the room. Some tried to approach, others took a step back, but all carried the same contained tension, the same discomfort, as if the ground were about to open up. The billionaire, however, didn't realize any of this. He was so immersed in his own arrogance that he didn't see the impact he had on each person there. And perhaps that's one of the most revealing parts of this journey. How can someone have so much money, so much power, and yet be so blind to their surroundings? This emotional blindness was evident when one of the employees, a younger man, took 2 hesitant steps towards him, trying to find the right moment to speak. His voice almost came out, but the billionaire raised his hand, abruptly, as if ordering him to be quiet without needing words, and the young man stopped. The silence that followed was as powerful as a scream. Meanwhile, the woman remained where she was, firm, lucid, almost imperturbable. But it wasn't a cold indifference. It was a conscious strength, built with years of experience, difficult decisions, and a mindset that doesn't bend at the first sign of disrespect. The employees knew this. They knew who she really was, and this knowledge transformed every second into a kind of emotional suspense, as if everyone were watching a movie where the villain hasn't yet realized he's digging his own grave. And it was at that specific moment, so charged with expectation, that the silence in the office grew heavy, because everyone knew what was coming next, except the billionaire. He only needed to look around more closely to notice the obvious signs. Papers on the desk bore her name printed in elegant lettering, documents signed by her, awards displayed on the shelf with photos of the woman smiling alongside renowned authorities and magistrates. There was even a plaque on the wall with a dedication honoring the visionary founder who transformed this place into a national benchmark. But his arrogance created a kind of mental filter. He saw everything, but perceived nothing. And as the tension mounted, the employee's behavior became even more significant. One of the secretaries lightly touched another's arm, as if asking for strength not to intervene impulsively. A veteran lawyer, standing by the window, swallowed hard when he realized that the billionaire was about to completely humiliate himself without anyone needing to say a word. It was like watching in real time an inevitable revelation, a truth that didn't need to be forced, only waited for the right moment to emerge. The woman, for her part, continued observing everything with the tranquility of someone who had already lived through far harsher situations. She didn't seem anxious or irritated. She seemed aware that certain people need to be guided to their own mirror to finally see what they refuse to see. And in a way, she knew that this billionaire was about to face one of the greatest revelations of his life, one of those that have a profound impact, that shake someone's mindset and force them to rethink years of automated behaviors. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's something very revealing in the way power manifests itself in moments like this. The billionaire repeated phrases about competence, about priorities, about important people, as if people's worth were tied to the status he believed he controlled. But in reality, he was exposing his own fragility. Arrogance is often just a disguise to avoid looking at one's own vulnerability. He spoke loudly because he didn't know how to listen. He humiliated because he didn't know how to relate. He demanded because he didn't know how to acknowledge. And this contradiction, so human, so common behind the scenes of many real stories, became increasingly evident as the woman remained unmoved in the face of the storm he was trying to create. The suspense continued to build. A second, older employee tried to give a quick, almost desperate explanation, but was interrupted before he could finish the first sentence. The billionaire didn't even turn his face. He was too busy asserting his presence, displaying his superiority, without realizing that true power never needs to be announced. True power is perceived, it is recognized, it is felt. And that was precisely the point he still didn't understand. If he had paid attention, he would have noticed that no one spoke to the woman in the same tone they used with any other employee. He would have noticed that, when passing by her, some slightly inclined their heads, as if showing silent respect. He would have realized that she knew every corner of the office, every person, every routine. But for him, all of that was invisible. He only saw what his own limited mind allowed him to see, and that's what creates the beauty and strength of this narrative. The gradual, inevitable revelation that approaches like a giant wave about to break. A revelation that doesn't arise by chance, but as a natural result of a journey marked by internal choices, self-control, and awareness of value. A revelation that, when it comes, will not only be about her, but about him, and about how the truth can completely transform the way someone sees the world. And it is at this point, exactly at this point, that the story prepares for the next move, without haste, without exaggeration, simply following the natural flow of everything that is happening before the eyes of the viewer. Write this down. I'm on this journey too. The silence that filled the office at that moment wasn't just the absence of sound, it was almost a presence. Dense, heavy, almost palpable. The billionaire was still talking, still uttering biting phrases, as if he were winning some kind of argument that only existed in his head. But for the first time since he'd entered, something seemed to tremble beneath the surface of his artificial security. Perhaps it was the way the employees stopped completely. Perhaps it was the way the woman, still seated, raised her chin at such a subtle yet firm angle that even the air seemed to shift direction. It was as if the exact moment of transformation was approaching, that instant, when the truth ceases to be implicit and reveals itself with full force. She stood up slowly, unhurriedly, like someone who controls time, not the other way around. There was no anger in her eyes, nor excessive pride. There was clarity. There was history. There was a mindset built over silent battles, difficult decisions, and a journey that no one there knew as deeply as she did. When she stood, the billionaire finally stopped talking. Perhaps because something in her posture disarmed him. Perhaps because, for the first time, he realized that something was out of place, something he hadn't calculated, something that didn't fit into the narrative he had created. She walked toward him with firm yet calm steps, and when she stopped just inches away, the entire office seemed to have shrunk to fit into that small space between them. It was time. The time when the truth, that same hidden truth that had been growing between the lines since the beginning, would finally find its voice. And it did. With almost surgical calm, she stated her full name, a strong, striking name that echoed between the walls as if it had been engraved there for decades, because it was. The billionaire raised his eyebrows, first confused, then trying to remember where he had heard that name before. She continued. She stated her title, but he didn't explain it only with words. He explained it with his presence. When she pronounced founder, the reaction was so great that even those who already knew felt a shiver. It was like witnessing a secret that, in truth, was never a secret, only ignored by those who chose not to see. She recounted, briefly and precisely, how the firm began, how she built it all from scratch when no one believed in her, how she faced closed doors, prejudice and distrust, and yet still transformed that space into what it is today, a national benchmark. While she spoke, there was no aggression, only firmness, only truth, a truth so solid that it didn't need exaggeration to assert itself. The billionaire, who just minutes before had felt like he owned the room, stood completely still. The color of his face began to change slowly, shifting from arrogance to surprise, then to an embarrassment so profound it seemed almost physical. He tried to open his mouth to say something, but the words simply wouldn't come out. And when he finally managed to, his attempt to justify himself sounded even worse than the silence. It was as if each of his sentences revealed more of his own ignorance. He stumbled over his explanations, saying he didn't know, that he had misunderstood, that the reception hadn't explained any phrase that could alleviate the weight of what he had done. But nothing worked, because it wasn't about not knowing, it was about having chosen not to look. The employees watched the scene with silent respect. It wasn't a celebration, it wasn't revenge. It was simply the recognition that balance was finally returning to its rightful place. The woman, the one, who moments before had suffered humiliation, now showed herself exactly as she always had been, a leader, a role model, a force, and yet she maintained her composure. She didn't humiliate him back. He didn't retaliate with aggression. He simply revealed it, and in that revelation, authority completely shifted sides. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because there's something powerful about this kind of turnaround. It's not just about putting someone in their place. It's about the impact the truth has when it finally finds space to emerge. The truth is silent until it is no longer. It accumulates, grows, waits. It waits for the moment when the mask falls, when the arrogance crumbles, and when reality reveals itself unfiltered. It is in those moments that we see who is truly prepared to face their own reflection. And that billionaire, at that moment, was facing a mirror he never wanted to see. The woman remained there, steadfast, while he hastily tried to reconstruct his image. But it's impossible to reorganize what has been dismantled by one's own posture. He, who had once seemed so great, was now diminished. Not because she had belittled him, but because the truth had placed him in his true proportion. He realized this when he tried to look around and saw that no one else treated him as the imposing figure he believed himself to be. His power, in that environment, simply dissolved in her presence. The revelation didn't bring explosions, screams, or dramatic confrontations. It brought something much stronger, awareness. And awareness, when it arrives abruptly, hurts. He felt that pain. He felt the blow of realizing that his behavior reflected exactly the mentality he had always tried to hide behind money. And at that moment, all he could do was face his own responsibility for the impact of his actions. Still, there was a beautiful stillness in that scene. A lesson was emerging, even amidst the discomfort, because some transformations only happen when a person is confronted with their own truth. And there, facing the woman he had tried to belittle, the billionaire was confronting one of the greatest revelations of his life. That greatness has nothing to do with wealth, but with character. The story still had much to unfold, because his reaction and the unfolding of that moment would shape the next steps. But for now, this revelation was enough to turn the tide of everything. Comment below. This makes sense to me. The billionaire stood before her, still trying to piece together his own posture, like someone who suddenly realizes they've spent hours walking in the wrong direction. The silence around them remained dense, almost thick, and seemed to embrace everyone in the room. It was one of those silences that requires no explanation, because it carries in itself the weight of everything that had just happened. The woman, now completely at ease in her leadership position, observed the man before her with a gaze that mixed firmness and compassion. There was no trace of revenge there. What existed was awareness, the awareness that certain situations demand responses that go beyond the ego. She took a deep breath, as if organizing not only her own thoughts, but also the energy of the room. Then she spoke in a controlled, confident tone that contrasted sharply with the billionaire's growing nervousness. She thanked him for being in the office, something that sounded almost paradoxical at that moment, but which only reinforced her class. And then she explained, with the same impeccable clarity that had accompanied her from the beginning, what the possibilities would be for him. She left no room for doubt. She left no room for ambiguity. And above all, she didn't let his behavior dictate how she would conduct that conversation. He tried to interrupt, tried to say he understood now, tried to apologize, but she elegantly raised her hand, not to silence him, but to show that, in that space, Respect needed to be the basis of communication. And that simple gesture had such a profound impact that the billionaire couldn't even maintain his own defense. His shoulders slumped slowly, revealing that, behind the facade of power, there was someone completely disoriented for the first time in a long time. The woman explained that she could take his case if he wanted. After all, it was part of the firm's job to serve clients, regardless of who they were. But she also said, with a heart-wrenching sincerity, that the relationship between lawyer and client needed to begin with trust and respect, two elements that, at that moment, he hadn't demonstrated. There was no resentment in her voice, only truth, a truth so mature and so unquestionable that the billionaire, upon hearing it, seemed to shrink even further. He was facing a kind of greatness he had never considered before. The employees watched everything with a mixture of relief and admiration. There was no celebration, because no one there saw the situation as a personal victory. It was deeper than that. It was poetic justice unfolding before their eyes in such an authentic way that it would be impossible to forget. It was true authority revealing itself, without shouting, without humiliating, without attacking. It was dignity in its purest form. She decided not to take the case. She said that, although she could, she preferred to refer it to another professional on the team, someone who hadn't been directly affected by the situation. And she explained this with such elegance that even the billionaire, though overcome with shame, could perceive the greatness of that gesture. It wasn't punishment, it wasn't revenge, it was setting a limit, it was self-awareness. It was, above all, a silent lesson he would carry with him for a long time. He tried to argue, this time with genuine humility. He said he needed her, that he recognized her competence, that he wanted to be served by the best professional in the company. But she only smiled, a discreet, gentle smile that said more than any words could. A smile that showed she didn't need to prove anything to anyone, because her story, her journey, her achievements already spoke for themselves. When she finally ended the conversation, the billionaire stood still for a few seconds, as if trying to reorganize his own thoughts. The entire room seemed to breathe again after a long time. It was as if everyone had witnessed not just a revelation, but a complete transformation. Not an instantaneous transformation, the kind that changes someone overnight, but a first step. The first shock of reality, capable of breaking an entire cycle of arrogance and emotional blindness. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's something very powerful in this kind of encounter between arrogance and character. True poetic justice doesn't happen when someone returns the humiliation. It happens when the response given is so much greater, so much more elevated, so much more conscious, that it exposes the pettiness of the initial behavior without needing any attack. The woman knew this. She knew that her posture, her serenity, and her decisions were more powerful than any provocative phrase. She knew that, by refusing to take his case, she wasn't punishing him, but showing that respect is the foundation of every relationship, and that no one, absolutely no one, is above it. The billionaire left the office more slowly than he had entered. His steps no longer had the same force. His gaze lacked the same haughtiness. And for the first time, perhaps since he was very young, he seemed truly aware of the consequences of his own actions. He looked at her one last time before leaving. A different look. A look that carried recognition, and perhaps the beginning of genuine regret. The employees returned to their places with a sense of relief, but also of inspiration, because witnessing that scene was like observing the essence of leadership in practice, the kind that doesn't need to crush to impose itself, that doesn't need to shout to be heard, that doesn't need to hurt to teach. And there, in that instant that lasted only a few seconds, it became clear to everyone that respect has no social class, color, or money. It's a value that one carries within, that is demonstrated in small actions, that is confirmed in the way we treat those we believe have no power over us. And as the office slowly returned to its normal rhythm, something new hung in the air, a feeling that this episode wouldn't end there, because stories like this leave marks, marks that transform into changes, changes that little by little redefine entire mindsets. And that billionaire's journey was only just beginning. Comment below, I'm on this journey too. And if you've made it this far, you can feel that this story spoke to you in some way. When we follow a journey like this, full of revelations, changes in attitude, and that poetic justice that touches us deeply, it's natural to create a real connection, and that's exactly what keeps this space alive. So, if this content made sense to you, if any part of it reminded you of something you've experienced or simply brought you an important reflection, leave your like. It seems small, but it makes a huge difference in ensuring that stories like this continue to reach you. And of course, if this type of storytelling strengthens you, inspires you, or helps you see things from a different angle, subscribe to the channel. It's not just about growing numbers, it's about building a community that understands the value of these deep conversations, these moments that truly move us. Each video here is designed to deliver something that stays with you even after you turn off the screen, and it would be great to have you walking this path with us. Before you go, also tell me in the comments if you stayed until the end. Right, I'm with you until the end. It's a beautiful way to show that this message reached where it needed to reach. And if you want to continue with this energy, there's a video here that complements this topic and delves even deeper into this reflection. Click and continue with me there.